This program, Hurricanes and Hurricane Evacuation, was originally taped on July 11th, 1995. At that time, there was little general awareness that 1995 could possibly become the second most active hurricane season in recorded history. Now join me, your host, Richard Salzberg. And I'll begin with introducing on my immediate right Hugh Cobb with the National Weather Service, and to his right, Jim Dixon with NOAA. Now, I've practiced this, and NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And yet, both of you all work for NOAA, and both of you have different job categories within that tremendous and very important umbrella. Can you delineate some of that for us so I can stop talking?
I work for the National Weather Service, which is one branch of NOAA.
And I work for the National Ocean Service, which is another branch.
And both of you all are charged with, basically, our protection. We're talking about hurricanes. Hugh, I know that that is one of your areas of expertise. I have a really concise two-word definition. A hurricane is a tropical cyclone.
That's correct.
Can you elaborate upon that?
Well, basically, it is a tropical cyclone in its general terms, but it's an area of low pressure which has acquired winds of 74 miles an hour or greater, and it does contain an eye-type feature.
How do your agencies work together? Jim, NOS, and Hugh, National Weather.
Well, the National Ocean Service has, in my particular office, has a network of what we call long-term water level stations. There's approximately 132 on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast of the United States, for example. Those stations are long-term stations which have collected for some 200 years in some cases the tide levels every 6 minutes, 30 days a month, 365 days a year. Because of technology, however, today we're able to transmit or make available the real-time data, or if you will, the actual height of the water level or the sea level or tides directly to the National Weather Service, and we work very, very closely in partnerships, obviously, in that scenario.
And that cohesion is improving and increasing all the time.
Absolutely.
We hope. And we know, in fact, because I don't think people in this area realize how key your facilities are to not only our area and region, but to the nation as a whole. Let me ask you this. Why, it may be pretty obvious, but you've assured me that there's no such thing as a dumb question. Why is our area of Hampton Roads particularly vulnerable to hurricanes, Hugh?
Well, primarily because of the elevation of the area. Norfolk, as you know, has an average elevation of about 13 feet above sea level. And most hurricanes produce an average storm surge in the order of 10 to 12 feet above sea level, so that a good portion of Norfolk could go underwater in a major hurricane. Plus the fact that we are low enough in latitude, 35 degrees north, that we occasionally get storms that come across the Bahamas, east of Florida, and cross the Carolinas, and just east of here on their way out into the North Atlantic. So we're that far enough south to be in that belt of danger, if you will.
We are continually vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And this is hurricane season. Jim, you were good enough to have brought with you as a prop the new Norfolk history, Norfolk the First 4 Centuries. And immediately you referred to the fact that hurricanes have fortunately, or I should say unfortunately, characterized our history. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, sure. Both of us and NOAA, the agencies that we work with, deal with historical data sets, and our office is able to certify those data sets based on our techniques and technology that we use. Interestingly enough, hundreds of years ago, back in the early 1600s, there was no NOAA or Coast Survey at that time, obviously, and you had to go back and really dig deep, so we have to go to our historians. And I brought this book simply because the fact of the history that was recorded back in the time of Jamestown and the time of Norfolk, 1682, there was major devastation, and entire cities, entire populations were lost. Obviously, there was no wind speed or direction monitors like we have today, or X-ray heads like Hugh has today. But the fact remains that entire populations were lost in this area, and it was a very serious problem for the early colonies.
Now, in terms of history, Hugh, you are expert in this area, and we had quite a severe, is the definitive worst case scenario hurricane that which occurred in, when was it, the 30s?
Right, August of 1933, the August 23rd hurricane, is considered the benchmark storm for the Hampton Roads area. And by benchmark storm, we mean once in a 100-year event. And this storm produced tide levels of 8.4 feet above mean lower low water at Sewell's Point, which was enough to cause flooding to about 30% of Norfolk and a good portion of Hampton and Portsmouth as well.
What is the likelihood, you said a 100-year cycle, is there any likelihood whatsoever of ever being able to predict a hurricane pattern for a season?
Well, Dr. Bill Gray at Colorado State has actually been a forefront in forecasting seasonal activity, and he relates that to the rainfall in the sub-Sahara region of Africa and the El Nino. And what I have here is the 1995 season forecast, which essentially states that there will be a total of 8 hurricanes, of which 3 are going to be major hurricanes this year. And he bases that again on the rainfall in the sub-Sahara region of Africa and the El Nino. The fact that the El Nino has let up, the rainfall has increased in the sub-Sahara region, so we're looking at potentially an active season for 1995.
Now, your National Weather Service facility out of which you work is in Wakefield, Virginia.
That's correct.
This is a brand new facility.
Absolutely.
What areas are you responsible for monitoring?
On February 1st of this past year, we assumed county warning responsibility for 66 jurisdictions, of which there are 9 Northeast North Carolina counties, 38 jurisdictions in East Central Virginia, and 4 counties on the Maryland Eastern Shore. We are co-located with the NexRad facility, the Next Generation Radar that you have heard about in the media, and there are about 115 of these sites deployed around the nation. Our facility is just one of those sites, and this is all part of an overall modernization of the National Weather Service.
Now, Jim, your facility in Chesapeake is state-of-the-art, presumably like Hughes is. Among your responsibilities, as you said, are monitoring the waterfalls. Is that correct?
Water levels.
Water levels.
It's okay.
Waterfalls.
Well, waterfalls, we do some of that in the Great Lakes, but that's okay.
Well, during a visit, we had a terrific tour from Larry Neeson and Phil Umbrero, and they cited that in many cases, in our area particularly, that the highest levels of water occur during a northeaster.
That's right. The storm that Hugh is speaking about in Norfolk, August 23rd, 1933, was the highest as far as the hurricane goes. But throughout the year, we don't want to forget that we have very, very strong northeast storms, or in some cases northwest storms also. These are numerous and up to 2, some 2 and 3 a year. I think just a few years ago we had one in December or March of '93. That was a rather large storm that really inundated the entire east coast of the United States, such as a hurricane would.
A lot of people don't realize it. NOAA is responsible for putting satellites in space, meteorological satellites.
That's right.
That's correct.
Do you guys do that?
No, we use the data from them.
We're the beneficiaries of the satellite.
I see. And I think the facility in Chesapeake, as I understand it, is one of only 2 or 3 in the entire country.
There's only 2. There's
only
one
2.
One on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. The facility in Chesapeake is responsible for the East Coast and the Gulf Coast and the 5 Great Lakes, all of the water level stations.
Are we any more secure for having that facility so close by?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. We certainly are glad to be here, so we're able to provide information to our local, our neighbors. We always try to be good neighbors, but we work as closely with Brownsville, Texas, as well as Eastport, Maine.
Once I don't want to use the word emergency, but once an urgent circumstance arises, presumably a large part of your mission is to coordinate with local officials and agencies to safeguard?
That's inherently the responsibility of the National Weather Service to provide public information. There's numerous methods for that, obviously, the VHF radio and through the local media. You can certainly speak to that more. Some of my concerns are with the mariners, the local maritime community. Norfolk sits in a harbor that obviously is a large international harbor, and we have ships that draw extremely deep water. The depths of the channels are now dredged to 50 feet, and the ship's drawing 48 feet. And one of the things about a hurricane or a strong storm is on its passing, or if according to the position of the storm, it equally as well draws the water out of the region. And we have many, many cases on record where we have drawn out as much as 3 to 4 feet of water from a harbor, in some cases leaving ships on the bottom. So the mariner's concern, should you have to embark or evacuate the Navy, should you have to evacuate large merchant ships and oil tankers and whatnot, we also have to be paying attention to the low waters.
And that's pretty much your responsibility to generate that alert.
We provide that information.
Well, gentlemen, I wish we had more time. Perhaps we can at another time. I want to thank you both for coming to the Civic Show, Hugh Cobb and Jim Dixon, and stay well, stay dry, and once again, we thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
And
you.
we're going to take a break, come back with some more key guests, and please join us. Thanks. We're talking about hurricanes and hurricane evacuation. Our guests for this segment are Stephanie Hanshaw, who is a transportation engineer with the Virginia Department of Transportation, and John Chappell, who is the executive director of the Norfolk Federation of Business Districts. Gentlemen, welcome to the Civic Show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You all heard, I hope, what our first guests from NOAA and the National Weather Service had to say, Jim and Hugh. Stephanie, one of your responsibilities is hurricane evacuation.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm surprised you don't have a full head of gray hair by now.
I'm getting there.
What, for our viewers and for me, what is a concise model of what we have at this point for a hurricane evacuation? God forbid that should occur.
Well, if you look at existing transportation network, we're very limited by the water boundaries separating the peninsula and the south side. Of course, you know, we have our infamous tunnels, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, one of which remains congested on a daily basis. Because of the water boundaries separating the landmass, we have a unique problem in the Hampton Roads area in that we have a very limited amount of roadways to evacuate the populace in the event a storm threatens the area.
Now, when you say a storm threatens, you obviously, your agency coordinates its awareness with many of the NOAA facilities that we've just described.
Absolutely, yes.
Tell us about the time frame that we have.
Well, we're working with the National Weather Service, and they keep an eye on the storm for us, and they provide us data on the storm's intensity, its forward motion, its tracking, and the anticipated time frame for landfall. And that's what's critical to the Virginia Department of Transportation, and that is the time we have available to us in order to evacuate the populace of Hampton Roads. In most cases, we'll have probably 12 hours at best before meteorologists can be relatively certain that a storm will affect our area. And given that 12-hour period, that's not a lot of time to evacuate 1.5 million people, which could very well be the populace of Hampton Roads.
John, when we've talked to some of the folks that have survived the Charleston hurricane and others, they're the first ones to say, yes, we stuck it out, but we'll never do so again. You were quoted as saying that Hampton Roads, for its population, is an area perhaps least served by the interstate system. What kind of shape is it your perception that we are in, despite the good efforts of Stephanie and his colleagues?